What's up, Make Pop Music? It's Austin Hull from Austin Hull Audio and Visual and Make Pop, and I am back again with another super exciting video for you guys. So we did the studio tour a couple weeks back, and you all seem to really like it, but I did get a lot of requests to actually do a tour of my computer, just to talk a little bit about my computer specs, and then what the most used programs are, what my most used plugins are, and just kind of go into my workflow with my actual computer. So I figured today we would actually hop into the computer. I would show you what I'm even running with, and then we'll talk a little bit about my DAW of choice, and then we'll also go ahead and just kind of dive into what some of my most used plugins are in terms of like VST instruments, and then we'll also talk about what my most used plugins are in terms of just like VST FX for mixing and sound design and stuff like that. So we're gonna hop in, we're just gonna quickly run through everything. If there is a plugin that we kind of chat about briefly in this video and you guys want to see a more in-depth run of it, or you guys want to see more tutorials on that, just let me know and we can easily do full videos dedicated to that. And I'll also have a full video coming out pretty soon about basically why I chose Cubase and kind of my past history with Cubase, and we're even going to be doing a little bit of a giveaway, but I don't want to say too much yet. That'll be coming within the next couple weeks, so I'm super excited for that. But as for now, let's go ahead and hop into my actual computer. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you want to see next time, because it always helps us to know what you guys are expecting. But without further ado, let's actually hop in and check it out. All right, now we're actually in my computer, so the first thing I want to go ahead and take a look at is the actual computer, because I get a lot of questions on that. So let's see. We are running with, it is a desktop, by the way, for anybody that's wondering. It was a Dell that I actually bought off of Newegg that I'm pretty sure had some aftermarket upgrades in it. So we have an Intel i7 7700 at 3.6 gigahertz. Super powerful processor. I haven't had any processing issues no matter how much shit that I'm running at any given time. I've got 32 gigs of RAM installed. Again, haven't even gotten close to maxing that out. I would say that if you're getting into production, I would do at least 16 gigs of RAM. And I would try to go for an i7, but if not, at least one of the upper level i5s. Especially if you're doing smaller projects, I would say at least upper level i5, 16 gigs. If you're doing big stuff, I don't think it hurts to go for an i7 and 32 gigs. We've gotten to the point to where computers are pretty affordable now. So, I mean, you can go get a solid production rig for, you know, 1,200 bucks. And I know it seems like a lot of money to put in, but I mean, if you think about it in terms of all of the audio stuff that you've got and this being the main hub, I don't think $1,200 is that bad of an actual, you know, investment. So we've got an i7 7700, we've got 32 gigs of RAM, and then let's go ahead and let's start taking a look at some of these hard drives. On this PC, I have a 1 terabyte SSD that's actually my local C drive, and this is what actually hosts all of my plugins. So this has like Cubase, the Adobe suite, this is what has Windows installed on it, etc. All of that is in the program files, and then that's basically all I use that drive for. So I really only have it for, you know, big programs that I need to actually store on here. So this Cubase Sessions drive, which I'm about to have to probably get another one, this is a 1 terabyte SSD, and this is actually external. It's just a Samsung SSD. And what this is all of my Cubase projects. So you'll see in here, this has got like hundreds of folders. And that's really all that's on there. So we have the local drive, which is my programs, and the Cubase drive, which is just my Cubase sessions. And then for all of my other stuff, like my samples, my presets, all of the, you know, complete file libraries, all of the stuff like that, where I'm bouncing my stems and stuff, that's all gonna be in this. So this is actually my E drive, and this is a 4 terabyte external HDD. And then I've also got another 2 terabyte external HDD that I don't have plugged in right now just because I don't need it. But I've got like extra backup sessions of old stuff on there. I have extra samples that I don't use that much, to where if I want them, I can just plug it in. But I like to save the USB hubs in my computer. So basically, we've got a 1 terabyte internal SSD, a 1 terabyte external SSD, and then a 4 terabyte external HDD. And I really like having all of my sessions and samples on external drives. That way, if I ever need to go to a studio or something like that, I just make sure that I take the installers, or that they already have what I need, take my iLock, take these 2 hard drives, and I should be good to go on any session that I might need at that studio. This is just the complete drive that they send you when you buy complete, so that's pretty much all that is. And that's my entire computer. So i7 7700, 32 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte SSD, 1 terabyte SSD, 4 terabyte HDD. Then I back up everything with Backblaze onto the actual like cloud. That way, if any of these drives ever short out, I can just back them up. And then I've also got an external drive that I'll plug in like once a week to do manual backups. And then that's pretty much it. Let's actually go ahead and talk about some of the programs now I'm using. So I get a lot of questions on how I actually screen cap everything, and so I'm screen capping through OBS. and it's a completely free plugin. It's super simple to use. You can do this, you can turn on a webcam if you want. This is the same thing that I use to stream to the Facebook group, so that's all going through OBS. And then a lot of you ask how I get the sound from my DAW. That's actually this other plugin called Voice Meter, and basically it's just a standalone audio driver, and then all I have to do is I just have to go into Cubase and make sure the Voice Meter is selected instead of my Apollo, and then that's good to go. So now anything that I play on my actual session will come through Voice Meter, and then I've got Voice Meter coming back through here, back into this desktop audio. So that's pretty much it. OBS to cap the screen, Voice Meter to take the files from the DAW to the actual OBS platform, and then that's basically it. Now let's go ahead and let's start talking about the actual audio stuff on my computer. So we'll go ahead and we'll start with VST instruments. So I use a lot of the Cubase stock instruments just because I think they are super sick. So you'll see me using Groove Agent a lot of the time. Groove Agent is just kind of a drum sampler, kind of drum pad, where you can either use their samples that they have, which they have really killer samples, or you can drag your own samples onto the drum pad, and then, you know, it's kind of similar to Battery, so you can, you know, do your MIDI effects out. You can go ahead and MIDI map everything with options and with mixers. Tons of options. You see me use this in almost every production video, so that's Groove Agent. Then FabFilter have some synths that I have. I don't use them too much. They're kind of cool if you want like more analog style synths. So I mean, they're kind of cool. They've got cool presets in there. They're nothing insane. Like I said, I'll use them if I want something a little bit more retro or analog, or I just don't want as many options on the actual interface, just because they're a lot more simple. So we've got like one and twin. That's just like a monophonic synth. And then I just got a lot of the native instrument stuff. I just upgraded. I had some stuff years ago, and then I just never really upgraded it because I never really found the need. And finally I was like, you know what? I want Complete, I want Battery, I want Massive, I want all those things again. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get them. So I've got Absinthe, which I don't use a ton. It is really cool though for just weird kinds of synthesis. You can do all kinds of funky stuff with all these sound mutations and stuff like that. So it's super sick. I don't use it a ton, so I'm not gonna dive into it a lot. Battery is really cool, but since I'm using Groove Agent a ton already, I just like to use Battery to see what kind of sounds they have actually in their program. I'm not really using this so much as my main kind of drum mapper or drum sequencer. I'm just using Groove Agent for a lot of that. FM8, this is a really cool FM synthesizer that I think I've talked about a little bit on the channel before. And FM synthesis can be kind of intimidating to learn and to really get into, but once you kind of learn how to use the FM synthesis methods to really create some actual patches that are super sick, you've got this kind of like expansive, endless library of really weird sounds, because you're doing all of the frequency modulation, and that's just affecting all of these different waveforms in such wild way. So a lot of their presets are super far out there. It's really ambient sounding, and it's really like chaotic at times, but it can be cool just to kind of get away from like the clean synths that you have in like Serum and Massive. So I mean, they've got some pretty sick presets. And then of course you can go into like your master, you can go into, you know, the attributes, which is where you can pick your presets. Then you've got your easy morph, then you've got your expert, which this is kind of like where you actually map everything out. So you can see that the matrix is a lot more confusing than something like Massive or Serum or Anna or something like that. You know, you really have to put some time into learning FM8, which is cool. It's just not really my go-to because it takes a lot of time for me to get what I'm kind of looking for, instead of Serum or Anna or something like that, where I can just pop in and get it done immediately. Next, this is just Complete Ultimate. It's just all of their factory libraries. I don't have any third-party ones bought at the moment. So basically just everything it comes with. Out of this, I'm using a ton of, I like Action Strikes a lot. I like Alicia's Keys just for a piano. Analog Dreams is pretty cool. I use Damage a ton, so Damage is definitely one of my most used. Let's see, I've been using a lot of Evolved Mutations and Evolved Mutations 2 just for like weird kind of atmospheric pads and kind of weird textures to put in the background. I used them a lot in the Billie Eilish track that came out Tuesday. Evolve is kind of the same thing. I really like Hybrid Keys. Hybrid Keys has some like really kind of funky stuff to where you can pick between these different presets, and then you can kind of like balance between preset 1 and preset 2. You've got like an A and B. So it's pretty cool. They've got a lot of weird stuff on here. And then it's kind of similar if you've used like Rise and Hit or any of the other stuff like that, to where they've kind of just got like libraries that you can pick from, and then you can kind of blend different sounds together. So I really like hybrid keys. It's cool to get like really weird key sounds and pluck sounds and stuff like that. Really good for like hip hop production and R&B production. Kinetic Metal is really cool for adding like really, really weird sounds and effects. So I'll use that a lot because they just have like really, really weird shit. So a lot of the time I'll use stuff like that for ear candy. I use a lot of this complete stuff for just ear candy type of stuff where it doesn't really carry through a whole track. Retro Machines is cool. I don't use it too much because I tend to just go for the Arturia bundle that I have that we'll talk about. I do use these basses. I mean, these are basically just, you know, sampled basses. So sometimes I'll sample something, and then if I want to actually continue that same bass sound, I'll go ahead and I'll just grab the Squire that we talked about in the actual studio tour, and I'll just track it. Other than that, I'm mainly just using a lot of the orchestral stuff. So like the ensembles, and then some of these pianos. I really like Thrill for like really weird atmospheric like tension stuff. It's got a lot of just really, really like fucked up gnarly sounds in it. It sounds like horror movie trailers. So there's a lot of cool stuff to do with that. So Complete has a lot of stuff. I would say the things I use most on it are Damage and Contact, the Evolve Mutation stuff and Contact, Hybrid keys, and then I would say that I use Massive a good bit, and then Battery a good bit. So I think it's worth the money. I think it's just kind of like a staple for a studio to have. Massive, I'm sure you guys have seen millions of tutorials on this if you watch tutorials online. This was pretty much the go-to synth for years. It's just a wavetable synthesizer. It's really similar to Serum. The interface just looks a lot more like a traditional synth. So, I mean, they've got a ton of sick presets, and then, you know, you've got your oscillators, and you've got your modulation oscillations, then you've got your noises, and then you've got all of your inserts, and you can just, you know, map stuff out and drag it, kind of similar to like you can with Serum, where you just map it and drag it. So that's really nice, but I typically go for Serum other than Massive. Some other plugins I have, I use this like Ample Martin guitar, which was a free plugin. I used it in the Billie Eilish song, so it's just kind of like, it's kind of cool to lay down ideas on acoustic. That way I don't have to drag out like 2 mics in an acoustic guitar every time. Then if, like I said, with the bass, if I want to keep it, I'll just keep it and kind of perform over it. Anna 2 is super sick. I've been using this a lot lately, and I'm actually doing a preset pack with them right now, so it's coming along really well. It's going to be 100 presets, and it's going to sound killer. This is actually made by Sonic Academy. If some of you on the channel know, I've done stuff with Sonic Academy where I've done like full walkthroughs of tracks, and we've built tracks from the start. So now they've got me coming on to make presets for Anna 2, and I love Anna 2 because you've kind of got the best of all worlds. You've got your wavetable kind of synthesis where you can even have 3D wavetables similar to Serum, and you can cycle through them, and they've got tons of options, and then you can add all your own options. So I love that. But the part that I really like about it, where sometimes this has an advantage over Serum, is that they have a sampler that runs almost like a granular synthesizer. So like I'll use Pad Shop a lot to do really weird pads and kind of granular stuff in Cubase, but they have it on Anna 2 where you can actually mix that in with wavetables, and then you can even do like FM synthesis with the FM mod here. They've got envelopes that you can just draw in similar to Serum. They've got all kinds of filters, and then, you know, you've got all of your others. So it's a really, really good plugin that kind of has the best of both worlds. You've got the flexibility and the ease of use that like a wavetable synth would have, and then you kind of have that weird, almost like messed up kind of sampled quality that granular synthesis has, and then mixing those two together you can get some really, really sick stuff. So like let's just go to like one of my packs that I did. Let's see, we'll just open one. So like there is Star-Lord, then you've got like all kinds of other stuff on here. We've got like Creepin'. So I've got a lot of sounds coming out, and they're going to range from everything from like dark pop to electro pop to indie pop. So I'm excited for that. I'll give you guys more details when that comes out. Hybrid, I don't think I've actually ever opened this and used it. It just came with the M Audio that I bought. So I don't use that a lot. Kick 2 is also made by Sonic Academy. This is super sick. You can basically make your own kick samples on here. So they've got a lot of presets, but basically what it is you're kind of working with these waves, and you can just kind of control the frequency and the envelopes of those. Then you can kind of mix in your own samples and sounds. So you've got like clicks, you can layer in your own kick samples that you have. Like sometimes I'll just go in and I'll just load up, you know, some kicks that I have already done, and then you can just kind of mix them all together. So this is a really, really cool way to like develop your kicks and not just have the same ones from Splice or from our sample packs or something like that. You can blend kicks together. You can kind of make your own depending on what the project needs. You can make 808s in this, which are super, super sick sounding. So I'll use Kick 2 a lot if I have a super specific kick sound in mind and I don't have a go-to sample for it. So I'm using that a lot. And then I use Play a lot just because I have the $25 East-West subscription. So I basically rent every plugin that East-West has. And out of these, most of the time I'm just using like Storm Drum or the Hollywood Brass and the Symphonic Choirs and Symphonic Gold library. So it's just a lot of the orchestral stuff that you'll see me kind of sprinkling in my productions. If I have strings or organs or, you know, brass or something like that, it's probably coming from East-West. So I love that. I use it all the time. Now we're to probably my most used plugin. Of course, you've seen me talk about Serum. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because I talk about it in almost every video anyway. If I need to make a sound and it's in my head and I know what I want, I'll just go to Serum and I'll make it in like 2 or 3 minutes. Serum's the easiest to learn in my opinion because it's so visual. And you can just hop in and make whatever you need to make. Other than that, I've got Vocaloid, which you guys saw me do a actual tutorial on a while ago. Vocaloid is super, super sick because if I have an actual top line that I want to lay down and, you know, if I don't have a vocalist or maybe somebody only sends me one vocal track, I can just go ahead and I can actually pop in and I can just add my own stuff with Vocaloid. So if you haven't seen, we'll link the Vocaloid tutorial below. It's super sick. It's really, really in-depth. It's like a 20-minute video just on that one plugin. Then we've got some Sonovox stuff. I don't really use Twist 2. It just, like I said, came with my M audio. A lot of the Sonovox and the Air stuff just comes with your MIDI keyboards when you buy them. I don't use them a ton personally. Then we've got our Arturia bundle, which I use all the freaking time. If I need something that's like an analog style synth, I'll go for the Arturia bundle, just because they have like the organs, they have the CS80s, they have like a Jupiter, they've got the pianos, they've got all the stuff that you could probably want out of a vintage synth. They've got like a Synclavier, a Vox Continental. So a lot of the time I'll use whichever specific one I want, and if I don't know what kind of sound I want, I'll just open up Analog Lab that has kind of all of them in the same spot, and I'll just run through it until I find something sick. So Analog Lab, I think this is one of the best kind of deals that you can get for your money. You can get them a lot of the time at Black Friday for like half off. I think I had this whole bundle for like 250 bucks, and it came with like 8 or 9 different synths and plugins. So it's super sick. I love it. I'm using that all the time. You'll see me use Piano 5 a lot. You'll see me use the B3 and the Wurlitzer a lot. You'll see me use the Stage 73 a lot. You'll see me use the Jupiter a lot. So I love that. Highly recommend that for anybody looking for more analog style synths or for something just a little bit different. Then we're getting on to TuneTrack. So Easy Keys, you've probably seen me using this a lot lately. I've got a couple of their expansions. I've got Dream Machine, Electric 200A, Electric Mark 1, and the Mellotune. So Dream Machine is basically just like these really organic, kind of dreamy sounds. Then we've got... So it's super atmospheric. I love this expansion. But the reason I really love Easy Keys is because now I know I'm playing a C sharp major 7th when I don't have any theory background. You know, I'm kind of learning now, as you guys know. But this is nice for people who, you know, are playing chord progressions and they want to know what they're playing and they don't. So there you go. It's really, really nice to have all those. I love all of these expansions. I love pretty much everything that TuneTrack makes. They've actually reached out for me to work with them, so I really appreciate all the guys at TuneTrack that have just reached out and done some collaboration stuff with us. So Easy Keys, highly recommend. Not sponsored or anything, they just let me try it out. And then Superior Drummer, if I don't want electronic samples, like if I'm not going for our Make Pop Music samples, or I'm not going to Splice, and I need something like an acoustic drum kit, or something with like brush hits, or something like that, Superior Drummer is basically the only place I'm going for that. This is by far, to me, the best acoustic sample drum library you can have, and I love that you get the mixer, so it's like mixing an actual drum kit in a session. You've got, you know, your kick in, kick out, kick sub, snare top, snare bottom, then you've got all of your racks. Then you've got like your ambient nears, your ambient mids, your ambient fars. You've got your overhead dynamics, your overhead condensers. So like there's literally 30 mics that you can choose from to get the drum mix that you want. They've got some cool presets, but a lot of the time I'll just load up the samples that I want and then actually go through and mix the mics however I need to. So it's really, really good for getting like really heavy acoustic pop drums, really heavy rock drums, doing stuff like jazz drums. So a lot of the time Superior Drummer is my go-to for all of that. And then I've literally never used this electric grand piano that came with Waves. It just came with a gold bundle that I bought. So now that we've gone through all of the actual VST instruments, let's go ahead and let's talk about a little bit about the actual VST effects that I'm using. So a lot of this stuff just comes with Cubase. The Avox stuff is actually on Tares, and I've been using that quite a bit. I've been using Harmony Engine a ton instead of vocoding everything, just because vocoding is getting really popular, so I'm trying to find a way to do a similar thing, but just make it a little bit different. And Harmony Engine has been my go-to for that, so I love this. I've been using it. I've probably used it on every production in the past couple weeks. And then they've got Mic Mod, which is really, really sick. It's kind of similar to like the Slate VMS thing, where you can select kind of your mic, and then you can select the mic that you want to be modeled after. So it's super cool. I haven't actually tried that one because I actually have the Slate VMS. But I've heard really, really good things about that. And then of course I have the Waves Gold Bundle because it went on sale for like 150 bucks, and I just had to buy it. Like, Waves is kind of the staple. It's by far not like the best plugins that you can get, but if you can get them on a sale, you can get a bundle of really, really solid plugins that you can use basically forever. So a lot of the time I'm using CLA bass just to like process my bass tones. And then Max Bass is super cool if you want like, you know, to add some harmonics in your bass. So like if you have an 808, you can add some harmonics in the upper region to kind of give it a little bit of lift. That way you can kind of make it out on an actual speaker. And then we've got some channel trip stuff I don't use a bunch. We've got Repeater that comes with a Slate bundle. I've also got the Slate bundle, which I'm using a lot. Repeaters are really, really cool delay. They've got a lot of really cool presets, and I love how many like options they have for filtering and for coloring, and they've got all of these different like sync modes and stuff like that. So it's super in-depth. It's super sick. I love it. It's not normally my go-to just because there's a lot of controls and sometimes I just get carried away. Typically I'm going for something like H-Delay just because it's so simple, you really can't get lost in it or fuck it up. If I want something a little bit more unique that's kind of got some like modulation and processing, I'll go with FabFilter Timeless, because Timeless actually has this really wild kind of like modulation matrix right here where you can do tons and tons of stuff with it. So it's kind of complicated to learn. It takes a minute, but once you learn it, you can do so much crazy shit with it. We've got like the Super Tab delays that come with Waves that I don't really ever use. Distortion, I do bit crushing a lot just to add like some weird little upper frequencies and stuff just to give it a little bit of flavor. So a lot of the time I'll use just the stock bit crusher. I've got a couple of the DrumForge plugins, so like Excite, you'll see Clip, and you'll see Transify come in a little later. So a lot of the time I'll use those if I have like a drum sound that's not, you know, popping exactly as I want. Most of the time that I'm distorting though, I'm going for either Saturn, or you'll see it a little bit later, Decapitator. So Saturn is super cool because you've got like multi-band distortion, similar to Cubase's Quadrafuzz. And then again, you've got like a modulation matrix. So you can do tons of insane shit with this. So you can just do, you know, normal saturation, or you can do actual saturation that's got like movement and glitching, and, you know, it's got panning and stuff like that. So I love Saturn for doing sound design stuff. Other than that, I use CLA drums sometimes on like snaps and rim hits and stuff like that. Other than that, I don't use it a ton. Dynamics, I'm typically going to Slate VMR and using the 1176 style plugins. They have the 116s in there. And for other kind of compression, a lot of the time I'll just use something like VBC Gray, Mu, or Red on my 2-bus, or I'll use something like the CLA 76 or the CLA 2A. Let's see what else I use. FabFilter Pro C is pretty sick. Transify is pretty sick for adding transients to drums. Sometimes I'll use like a multi-band compressor if I've got like some low mids that are kind of tubby in certain areas, just to clean those up just a little bit. Envelope Shaper a lot of the time I'll use when I'm actually making drum samples for all of you guys, just so we can make sure that they're popping in all the right places. So that's what I'll do for dynamics. And then for multi-band dynamics, that's where I'll use that multi-band compression with C4. And then on my master bus, I'll use something like Linear MB to actually do a lot of that 2-bus multi-band compression. I've never really used CLA effects. I don't use this de-esser, but I hear that it's super sick. I typically just go for FabFilter Pro DS. For EQs, I'm almost always just using Pro Q if I need a graphic EQ. And if I need something else, I'll go with one of the ones in VMR, so like the FGA or FGN style EQs that they have, just because if I need a hardware EQ, those are probably going to be my go-to. And if I don't want a hardware EQ, I'm just going to go with Pro Q because the layout is super, super simple. It's super easy to use. You know, you can solo out frequencies to hear what's happening. So that's pretty much my go-to for EQ. Other than that, let's see. We've got the Fab Filter stuff. We've got some filtering stuff. So Simplon and Volcano are really, really cool if you want to do like stepped filtering, because they also have modulation matrices. You'll see a lot with the Fab Filter stuff. It's super cool for sound design because there's a lot more that you can do with it other than just like a standard distortion or a standard delay or something like that. So I love their kind of sound design bundle that they have where you can go in and you can do all those modulations and stuff like that. Let's see, what else do we have? I use CLA guitars or guitar tool rack sometimes if I just need like a quick guitar tone on the go. Let's see. For modulation, I love using AutoPan. I love using Chorus. I love using Doubler. You'll see me use Doubler all the time on vocals. Flanger's cool if I just need like just a simple flanger for like a guitar track or something like that, or just a quick effect. Other than that, I love the rotary that Cubase has. You've probably seen me use this quite a bit. This is like a really cool effect that kind of adds like this weird chorus plus this weird filtering, and then it's almost got like a little bit of a warble to it. So I love rotary if I want to make stuff sound old or creepy or just kind of like really off-putting. I'll just go with something like that to kind of like mess the sound up just a little bit. Then you've got the native instruments plugins, which I haven't really used these a ton yet. I still need to kind of dive into them a lot. I've mainly just been using the actual VST instruments and not really the effects, but they've got a ton of stuff in there. I can update you guys once I use that a little bit more. This has a lot of cool stuff. Auto key is also made by Antares, so you'll see me use that sometimes just to figure out what the key of a vocal is, so I can just pop that key in auto tune and use it. So I love auto key for that. Camel Crusher is used in every single mix I do, and it's 100% free, so I highly recommend Camel Crusher. It's super, super sick. Sometimes it's hard to still find a download because it's really old, and since it was a free plugin, they like stopped updating it and stuff like that. Other than that, you'll see me use Halftime and Kickstart a lot. Those are both made by Cable Guys, and these kind of add a lot of movements. And then I'll just use Halftime to kind of cut stuff in half, similar to how people will slice stuff up in like FL Studio. So that's really, really cool if I just have something in, if I have like a little bell melody for like a trap kind of song, and then I want to blend the mix at 50% so it goes, half the speed mixed with full speed. You kind of get this whole new unique sound. Other than that, Kickstart is just really cool for like sidechaining stuff to 4 on the floor. You can go 1/8, 1/4, 1/2, or just 1/1, so like a 1 bar. And then they've got all these different kind of envelopes. It's really sick if you just need like that, pumping automation, and you don't want to have to sidechain anything, or you don't want any kind of like, LFO on anything or anything like that. I just go for Kickstart because it's super, super simple and you really can't mess it up at all. I've been using Track Spacer quite a bit if I'm sidechaining like my bass to my kick, just because a lot of the time in bass I like the upper kind of mids and the upper harmonics to not get sidechained because it feels like it's there over the kick, so you don't kind of lose that intensity, and I just want the low end sucked out. So Track Spacer is super cool because you can actually just like pop this to where you want, and it's only going to take out the frequencies that are overlapping. So if I have a kick that's like hitting really, really hard at like 50 to 100 hertz, and then I have a bass that's anywhere from 50 to 1,000 hertz, it's really only going to sidechain that bass between 50 and 100, and then it's going to leave the rest all the time. So it's super, super sick to kind of get a lot of that sidechaining just in those problem areas out of the way, but then still leave the areas that are not touched. That way you're not actually just scooping that or ducking that completely out. So I'll use Track Spacer if I want to do sidechaining that is really strategic to different kind of frequencies. You've probably seen me use Vocal Synth 2 quite a bit if I need to do anything with like any kind of actual vocoding or like weird kind of spatial vocal effects. I'll just go for Vocal Synth 2. You can rent it for like $10 a month until you own it. It's super simple. There's a million tutorials on that, but if I need a vocoder, that's where I'll go. For pitch shifting, I'm basically exclusively using Auto-Tune Pro and then just Very Audio in Cubase. So Auto-Tune Pro is super sick. It's never left me with a need for anything else, even before I had Pro when I was on 8. I loved it, used it all the time. Super killer. Powered plugins, this is where all the UAD plugins put themselves. I don't use a ton of UAD stuff. The only things I'll really ever use are, sometimes I'll use like the Pultec kind of stuff that they have, just because not a lot of other companies have Pultec replicas and they do it really well. And then a lot of the time I really just use their plugins for like monitoring and tracking. just in their actual UAD console. I don't use a ton of their stuff in the mix just because I don't have a lot of DSP with them, and I don't typically need them. I don't find that big of a quality increase between those and something like Slate or even Waves. So a lot of the time I'll just go for the stuff that's a bit more accessible, especially with the tutorials and stuff like that, because if you don't have UAD hardware, you can't even use the software. So I try not to use too much of that in my actual productions. For reverb, I'm using basically Verb Suite exclusively. If I need any other kind of reverb, sometimes I'll go with like the Lexicon style reverb that you can get in the UAD bundles. Other than that, yeah, Verb Suite is pretty much it. Cubase actually has some really sick reverbs. I just don't really have a need for them now that Slate has this. In terms of other Slate stuff, they've also got the VBC stuff, which I use on my 2-bus a lot, Verb Suite, and then Virtual Mix Rack I'm using a ton. That's just the plugin that you see that looks kind of like a 500 series lunchbox, where it's got just the little modules. So I do a lot of my initial kind of hardware style EQ and compression in that, just to get sounds right, and then I'll go in with the more digital kind of surgical stuff. Then I'll use Virtual Tape Machine if I want any kind of like tape saturation, just to either like smooth out high end or add some kind of lower harmonics, or just to kind of give it that like crunched kind of vintage sound. So you can go pretty minimal with it and it just kind of adds this nice bit of warmth, or you can go really aggressive with it and then it's going to kind of really start to saturate it, something like kind of Decapitator would do. Then we've got the Sound Choice stuff. So I've got Crystallizer, which is a really cool delay that will also reverse the delay into itself. So a lot of the time I'll use that for really creepy sound design and sound effects. We've got Decapitator, which is probably my other saturation of choice, just because they've got all of these different modes down here. You've got your mix knob, you've got your high cut and your low cut, and you've got your tone. So it's really everything that I could want in saturation. I can get almost any kind of saturated sound that I'm after, and they just did a sale that might still be going where you can get it for like $50, so that's a super steal. Other than that, you guys see me use Little Ultra Boy and Micro Shift quite a bit. Little Ultra Boy super sick for just doing pitch shifting, you know, an octave up, an octave down, shifting little vocal chops and stuff like that. Love it for that kind of stuff. Spatial and Panner, I don't really use hardly any of this. Sometimes I'll use S1 if I want to like widen a reverb or a delay or something like that. Don't really use a ton of that though. For tools, I don't really use any of that. I have the TSC X50 when I want like metal guitar tones or hard rock guitar tones, just because it's a really nice kind of style VST that has a really nice amp head, and then you can just use cab impulses. So they've got some that it comes with, and then you can also load up your own. So a lot of the time that's what I'll go with if I need something a bit heavier. And then last but not least, vocals. We've just got CLA vocals, which I don't use a ton, but a lot of people do. Vocal synth, which is just again in this folder, and then Waves Tune, which I don't use because I've got auto tune. So Auto-Tune is pretty much all I'm going with for that. But that's basically all of my plugins. I know it was super run and gun and we kind of just flew through everything. I just wanted to kind of show you guys what was on here and what I'm using. If you want to see me actually use some of these in practical applications, let me know which plugins you want to see and we can actually do full videos on those where we show like sound examples and we actually dive in and we actually like go into the actual interfaces of them. But for now, I just wanted to kind of show you guys what I'm using, what I'm not using, kind of what my recommendations are, because I get a ton of questions on what plugin should I get, what, you know, effects should I use, should I get Waves, UAD, or Slate, yada. So hopefully this video helped with all those kind of questions. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for this. As you can see in my computer, I definitely have a lot of power, but I don't go overboard with it. I don't have more than I think that I'll ever really need or that I'll use. I don't do a lot of video stuff on this computer. My wife handles all the video stuff on her Mac. I do a lot of my graphic design stuff just on my Mac, just kind of lounging around the house. So this computer is really just dedicated for audio production. That's literally it. So it's not a bad computer. Like I said before, it was like $1,200 and then I added a couple external hard drives and stuff like that. So all in all, like $1,600, which is not bad for how, you know, much of a beast this thing is. It'll run 200 track projects with tons of auto-tune, tons of plugins, tons of Serum instances, all that kind of stuff with no issues. So I definitely do think it's worth it to go ahead and get a computer that's going to have upgraded RAM and upgraded processor. It might have a little bit of extra storage. I really like the SSD. So, you know, hopefully that'll help you if you're looking for what kind of computer to get. And then I hope that you also enjoyed kind of running through the plugins. I know we mentioned them all pretty briefly, but you've probably seen a lot of them used in our tutorials before. Again, to any of the plugin companies that have actually reached out to have me try them, I really appreciate it. It helps me out a lot. I can actually recommend them to you guys, so it helps you out a lot. So it's really appreciated. We're getting tons of support on the channel, but we appreciate the support from all of the companies that have reached out to us, to all of the people watching this, viewing it, subscribing it, commenting, liking, to everybody on the group. But if you guys have any more stuff that you want to see, definitely let us know in the comments below. Go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and we'll be back next time. Let us know what you want to see, and that's it for now. Much love, make pop music. Peace out.
The voices in my head, they're telling